I think for a lot of Chicago sports fans, this is the first time they've seen a legit dynasty finally come to an end. Even though the winning has been long gone, the faces, the memories are officially over as Jonathan Toews will officially not be brought back by the Chicago Blackhawks. Welcome in to this edition of the Sports Cubicle. It's the marvelous one, Dan Marver, Devin Tingle, Paul Chivari, and myself, Mike Mercado, and this statement from the general manager of the Chicago Blackhawks, Kyle Davison. I've had a number of conversations with Jonathan through the season about his future with the Blackhawks. And recently, we have had the difficult conversation that we want to be re-signing him this offseason. Tonight will be his final game as a Blackhawk. And it's very important to us to be able to provide him the proper send-off for Jonathan and our fans. He has done so much for this organization. And no matter where he plays next, we're excited our fans get the chance to show Jonathan exactly how much he means to them. The Blackhawks would go ahead and lose that game in overtime, but Jonathan Toews would have scored a goal himself in that game and would have a standing ovation. There would be tributes, and it was a huge moment at the United Center. But the time has come, and I can tell you this, as we go around the room to talk about this Blackhawks dynasty and everything that's happened for this team, for me, Devin, you're the youngest one here by a few years, me being the middle child of this group. And then obviously we have Paulie being the older brother, and Marvel has seen so many different teams and bad teams in Chicago sports. For you and I, at least for me, I could remember 97, 98, 7, 8 years old, a little bit of 96. But I really remember the bad Bulls and then the Derrick Rose and the Kirk Heinrich years and everything in between, right? What the Blackhawks brought to this city for sports fandom, especially if you were somebody like me who was a Bears fan, Cubs fan, Bulls fan, there wasn't a lot of winning. If you're a White Sox fan, in 05, that was that bridge that they won the World Series. You got to 2009. But this Blackhawks team was the first dynasty a whole sports generation saw. And now it's officially over. You have a Patrick Kaner in New York. Kane is gone. You have half these dudes from those Stanley Cup teams announcing now and doing pre and post game here in Chicago. It is a realization, the mortality of sports dynasties. And Devin, somebody who, like me, we really didn't get a chance to see a lot of dynasties. The closest for me is the Cubs, and that was more of a awesome window of winning, but not necessarily a dynasty. So how do you feel about this dynasty, your true dynasty for your lifetime, kind of being officially over?
Well, I mean, I remember the days back when the Blackhawks weren't even on TV. If you remember that, the home games, at least me and my dad would go to the bar and be like, "Hey, you see that little corner over there? Can we have the Blackhawks on there?" So it was finally nice to see them, actually winning here. Just to see that team turn it around here, and you finally got a sport like hockey that really isn't one of the more popular sports here. I'm wearing a Bulls shirt right now, that and a White Sox hat. That'll really tell you what the city of Chicago, really likes to focus on there. Except it's usually the other team. I'm getting sidetracked now here. But definitely with the Bulls dynasty, I was 3 in 96 when they won it all. So I didn't see any of that. So coming to see the Blackhawks, a team that finally won, it was amazing, especially the year they did it too, because they were just expected to make the playoffs in 2010 and get knocked out right away. The fact that they turned it around and won the whole friggin' Stanley Cup, that was incredible. And, they had several NHL appearances in between there too, but they won 3 cups. And I mean, they should have won 4, but I'm not going to, get on that. I'm almost sore right now. I'm getting so mad just thinking about the past year.
Uh-huh.
But, it's really just great to see a team and, young guys. Because I remember when Toews and Kane, I don't know how I got their names mixed up, when they first got signed, it was just incredible because, Paul Acius might remember back when, it's like, oh, Eric Daze, the Blackhawks have a friggin' chance. Yeah. Tomo Rutu, hell yeah. And now it's like, okay, we're finally getting some guys. They had a great amount of stars there. And the Blackhawks, have been trying to build on that nostalgia for years. Is how many guys did they bring back from all the Stanley Cup teams when they were like past their prime and olds? It's like the White Sox. Jesus damn Christ. Oh, we got to bleep that out for the show.
Yeah, not for you two.
But in all reality, it's kind of nice to see, just that we got to have this here. But, to say that like the dynasty is over, it's been over for a while now, Mercado. I mean, I think Toews should have been traded 3 years ago. And I mean, I honestly don't think this might be. I heard rumors he's contemplating retirement, but I think this is going to be one of those things. Unless nobody offers him a good contract, he'll retire. But if he gets something he likes, he'll probably stay around the NHL. But I mean, the Blackhawks, it made the most sense right now. And I mean, Jonathan Toews this year told the Blackhawks, "Hey, I'm lifting my no trade clause. If you guys want to trade me, that's fine. While Patrick Kane's like, no, you got to trade me to the teams I want to be traded to, or else I'm not going. It's like, way to help this team that you helped build all the years, Patrick Kane. F you. So yeah, Jonathan Toews, I mean, his playing has been slipping throughout the years, but the captain, class act. I mean, just and another thing with Chicago, it's like we got a lot of great athletes that are real, just kind of a-holes in real life. Michael Jordan, another guy who runs his mouth every now and then. But Jonathan Toews, just a class act, represent the Blackhawks and the city here. And I just think, it's nice that, I mean, heck, my cousin, he was a huge basketball fan growing up. And then when, Jonathan Toews came in, he was like, I want to start playing hockey now. So, I mean, real nice. We had a guy who's a class act, role model, and, future Hall of Famer in about 6 or 7 years. I can't wait to see his banner hanging up with all the other greats.
It's interesting you bring it up, and we're going to throw it to Paul in a second, who kind of has even a bigger perspective of the 90s complete run of the Bulls and what the remnants of the freshly Chicago Bears winning a Super Bowl was in this city. But I also want to bring up, he was a class act, but it's also one of these things where the demons of the whole Kyle Davidson and that entire front office thing in that locker room is kind of being exercised, and I think for all of us, like, yeah, we wish good health on Jonathan Toews, right? And we think the memory of his play will be the Stanley Cups. But I also think this team needed to move on one way or the other. And whether you had to hold on to Patrick Kane and you could only get a second round pick or X amount of things or whatever, like, you had to move on. You had to move on from Toews. You have to get away from Rocky, that entire front office. But I think for right now, that's something that's always going to be part of the story. But for right now, we'll focus on 19, the captain, the moments of greatness, and the amazing game in Philadelphia, even though it's Patrick Kane who scores that goal, that moment, the obviously 2 goals in 17 seconds against Boston, and then winning a Stanley Cup at home against Tampa Bay. But Paulie, you saw not just like, you were fortunate where you got to see all 6 titles for the Chicago Bulls. You saw the hype, even though you're a Raiders fan, you as a boy knew the hype and love of that 85 Bears team in this city. This Blackhawks dynasty, this run, controversy and all, but what did you feel? Now, the dynasty, like Devin said, has been done for a long time, but like, this is it. This is the old Yeller going to pasture. This is it. This is the moment that it's all over. They're going to try to get a 1-2 draft pick, and it will be a brand new day. Heck, even the announced team is different, So what did you think when you saw 19, the captain, Jonathan Toews, out there for the last time at the Madhouse on Madison?
It's definitely the end of an era. And the Blackhawks were a dynasty, 15 years ago, 10 years ago. And he was really the embodiment of it. When you go back and you look who hoisted the trophy for the first time, all 3 times, it was the captain, Jonathan Toews. But, I was kind of, preparing for this. I was going over some of the accolades and things that I might have forgotten about his career. And, he was the Conn Smythe winner, the first run, it's MVP of the playoffs. He won 2 gold medals with Team Canada, including when they beat the United States in 2010, which was
best games ever.
One of the best games ever. Yeah. And who scored the first goal for Team Canada in 2010? It was Jonathan Toews. They win the gold medal in 2014. Who scores the first goal in the gold medal game for Team Canada? Jonathan Toews. Those are his only 2 Olympic goals, and they came at a very good time to put his team on the board first in a game that they eventually won. I don't think he was the captain of Team Canada. That doesn't really matter. That's neither here nor there. But definitely an important player on the international stage as well as the club level, and how he was on the NHL like all-century team. I think top 100 players. Even looking at some of his stats, if he didn't play the season, he would have been top 100 all time in plus minus, but he lost like 31 goals in the plus minus ranking.
That's
and then what point shares are, but he's in top 200 for that. 131st, tied for 129th, I should say, for points with 883. It's an impressive career. And then you look at some of the similarity scores of guys that his career matches up with, and there's some Hall of Famers in there. Dale Howardchuk, Denny Savard, who another former Blackhawk who has his number retired and will be probably right next to Toews because Savard wore 18, and I'm assuming Toews is going to be up there. I mean, if Marian Hossa is up there, then you know that Toews and Patrick Kane are going to end up there someday. And then I forgot that he was not a Hall of Famer, but he also compares to another Chicago center who was a legend, number 27, Jeremy Roenick.
Yeah.
So it's good company to be in, even though there's some, non-Hall of Famers in there. But to throw out some other names, Adam Oates, Sergei Fedorov. I mean, those are some important names to be up there with when you talk about a hockey career. And yeah, I mean, he's probably lost a little bit of stride in his, in his skates these days. But he turns 35 coming up later this month. He still could play for another team if he wanted to. But if he hung it up right now, we're talking about an all-timer. He is definitely a Hall of Fame type hockey player, and I hope to see him enshrined someday.
Quick live on air edit. I mentioned Kyle Davidson. I meant Kyle Beach in the sexual assault accusations and case against the front office and the training staff, or that training staff member and whatnot. So I wanted to make sure we made an amendment for that. They don't want to drag Kyle Davidson into the mud for no reason. But also, I think you bring up Jonathan Toews playing, unlike Patrick Kane, who has value in this league, is going to be impactful for a few more years. Even though we were mentioning this off air, Paulie, actually at the studio, maybe it was today or a few days ago, where even though he's definitely, let's say, lost a step, lost a level, whatever you want to say the cliche is, his skill is still top elite for Patrick Kane. It's not the case for Toews anymore. He's not special at necessarily anything on the ice anymore, other than he's Jonathan Toews. He's Coach Bombay for all us Mighty Duck fans. You know what I mean? Like, it's all love, it's all respect, but like, there are a lot of awesome cats out there playing hockey, and the game is so good. These guys are so big, so fast, that somebody like him, who he hasn't been the Jonathan Toews we all know, he hasn't had that opportunity to age gracefully in the sport since his illness with these concussions. It hasn't been right. And here's the thing, this is something we've talked about off air. We know when people deal with head injuries, let's say like a car accident, or here in the Midwest in Chicago, when you slip on the ice, some people just, you're thrown off. You're different. Like, there are people who go through bad enough head injuries where that does that. And this dude is playing one of the most dangerous sports at a high level and always gave it his all. And I think that's the one thing I appreciate from Jonathan Toews, is there seemed to always be this humbleness from him, even amongst his greatness. There always seemed to be, this team does have its demons, but I think that he does, even when at the end of it, being mic'd up at the United Center, I'm not worthy of this. It's like, yeah, he might know he's mic'd up, but there is this kid from the country, from the farms, coming and becoming this huge Chicago icon. And when we talk about it, I think he retires. I think he becomes an ambassador. I think he gets his statue. He gets his jersey retired. I think he goes out on the sunset, riding the horse as the captain. Oh, captain, my captain. I think he walks away. And I think, just like everybody else, I think he's going to have like a nice return, like Marian Hossa. Marian Hossa had a lot of drama because of the contract and everything, but kind of just went away quietly. The people still love him. No, nobody's ever going to talk bad about Hossa. So I think that's going to happen for Toews, but it'll be interesting. So what do you think? You see where Paulie, I'm going to actually make you put an answer to it, but Dev, where do you think he plays next year? Ooh, Dev is so shook right now. If you're watching live on YouTube, he has frozen in time. I'll throw it to you, Paulie. Do you think a Jonathan Toews is going to, we know for sure Patrick Kane is going to play for a little while longer, but like, is after watching that goodbye, after hearing the press conference, seeing all the love on social media, what are your vibes? Is he going to retire? Is he going to play? If you actually had to put an answer to it.
I'm guessing that he's going to retire because, he's dealing with like long COVID symptoms. I think you were alluding to some of the concussion stuff, which is a realistic thing with him. But I do think that COVID messed him up, and hockey is an endurance sport, so to be able to play after having COVID is quite an accomplishment. But from what it was being reported earlier this year, he was dealing with the symptoms of long COVID still, and I think perhaps maybe that convinces him that it's over. I know he was from Winnipeg originally, at least born there. So I assume maybe he would play for the Jets or some team like that. But I'm reading that actually his favorite team growing up was the LA Kings. It would kind of hurt to see him play for the Kings given their role in the Blackhawks dynasty. But I could see him maybe finishing it out with a team that he prefers on a really cheap contract. But honestly, I think if I had to put money on it, I'd say he's probably plays his last NHL game.
Dev, really fast, because we have somebody who has come into the office building with some donuts and coffee. Dev, Jonathan Toews, does he retire or play another season in the NHL?
I honestly think I'm going to compare.
Oh, the Cylons got him, guys.
I think
the Cylons got him.
Test the market, and if he gets a contract he wants, like, hey,
he got this in a silence, ladies and gentlemen. Why the
retire
Cylons
right now, kind of right off in the sunset.
Why they have kidnapped while the stormtroopers, while the Klingons have all gotten to Devin. We'll get back to him in a second. Welcome back into the office. The one and only, the marvelous Dan Marver joining us here on the Sports Cubicle. It's Paulie Dangerous, Paul Chivari, Devin Tingle, myself, Mike Mercado. The one and only, the captain, Jonathan Toews, will not be brought back for the Chicago Blackhawks. This made official from GM Kyle Davidson in his last game in the United Center. Marver, we have been gushing. We have been talking about Jonathan Toews. We've even talked about the controversy of the team and everything that happened with Kyle Beach, but we want to kind of focus on what this dynasty meant for this team. Your thoughts on the impact of 19, the captain, Jonathan Toews, officially being done with the Chicago Blackhawks after this season.
Well, I mean, it gave him opportunity to have a good send-off. So I think that was important. If it had just been uncertain, I think the certainty was a good thing, because they were able to, he scored a goal in his last game. And, since they were playing for nothing, basically, they were able to really honor him. And I think that's very worthwhile. So I doubt that. I mean, he's kind of been like mysteriously injured for much of the last 2 years. I can't imagine him playing anymore, for anybody. But then they'll be able to have a video tribute to Patrick Kane when he comes back in with the Rangers next year. So, think about this. I mean, the Stanley Cups have been pretty elusive for Chicago over, in the 20th century. So the fact that these guys were the ones that really were the leaders for the Stanley Cups is going to be something that you can't take away from them. So it's really, maybe they'll have a statue someday. You never know.
Let me ask you guys this, and we're going to try this one more time. All right. And then we're going to go around the room for my question. Devin, does Jonathan Toews play another season, or does he retire?
Let's see. Can anyone hear me before I start rambling again?
Yes.
Okay. Thank God. I honestly am going to compare Jonathan Toews to another Chicago legend and Brian Urlacher here. I think he's going to tread the waters. He's going to try something. He'll maybe have a few injuries too. But unless he gets a contract he wants, and I don't think anyone's going to give him, a big contract like he wants, I think he's most likely going to retire. And I think this would probably be the best thing for him, honestly. Just hang it up at this point. Let Patrick Kane get those few more years out here, and then just let's have the good memories of Jonathan Toews. Let's not turn him into a guy like Brett Favre, who tarnishes a huge chunk of his career playing way longer than he should.
Attaboy, Devin, you got through it, my guy. The Klingons and the Cylons and the Stormtroopers didn't kidnap you this time around. And I want to go around the room really fast as we celebrate the end of a fun time as sports fans here in Chicago. What was your favorite Stanley Cup of the three? I was going to say your favorite moment. Personally, it's kind of like the Dark Knight and Batman Begins argument for me. While nobody ever mentions it, I think the 2009 series against Detroit was some of the most fun I've ever had. It was a real introduction for me into the sport and this team. And for them to kind of lose, and then the next year it paid off as like, oh, this team was kind of fun. Like, I'm going to root for them. Like, oh, I'm all in. And then they go on and win the Stanley Cup and become this dynasty. I have a lot of love for that 2009 series and seeing Hossa switch sides. And it was just really cool. But my personal favorite, I have to say, as much as everybody's going to probably say the Bruins 13, 2010 was the first time in my life I got to celebrate a Chicago championship. I didn't get to celebrate a White Sox World Series. I was a child, 6, 7, 8, so I was just having fun because everybody was having a great time. The Bulls were winning. North Harding was a party zone that night. But I was 20 when the Blackhawks won their first Stanley Cup. That meant everything to me. The Bears had lost in a Super Bowl when I was 16. This was not something I was accustomed to. So Patrick Kane, in the most Chicago sports way, winning it in a way where we didn't really know if they won or not, beating the disgusting Philadelphia Flyers. It's kind of one of the awesome sports moments for me. So I will go with that one. Let's go with you, Paulie. What was your favorite Stanley Cup of the three?
It used to be 2010, but that's been tarnished ever since the Kyle Beach thing.
Yeah.
Just because it felt like, the real fans were really into it. And it seemed like a lot of bandwagoners came in afterwards.
Yeah.
I remember trying to convince some of my friends to go to the bar to watch Game 6, and they didn't want to. They were like bored to tears by it. 3 years later, they're mad at me that I'm not watching a game in February.
Yeah.
So
those are some interesting times.
yeah, and then 2013 was fun. I remember how excited I was during the 17 seconds. But I thought 2015, looking back on all of it, they won it at the United Center.
Yeah.
They beat the Tampa Bay Lightning, who are one of my other teams. Yeah, so I think when it's all said and done, 15. But originally in the moment, it was 10.
Yeah, I agree. I think bringing up the Kyle Beach thing is important too. Yeah. But besides the scandal, yeah, that's a good one. 15 is probably the coolest one because it was at home against the team that would be the real dynasty of the era.
You mentioned losing to Detroit the season before they won their first cup. This team was even fun to watch when they lost.
That's what I was. Yeah.
How exciting that 2014 series was against LA, or when they lost to Vancouver in I think it was like in overtime in 2011.
Yeah.
And then when they beat Vancouver in that series before they played Detroit in 2009 was exciting too. So I mean, it's not just about the finals. It was that entire run, win or lose. They were just such an amazing team to watch.
The 2011 series against Vancouver, I turned 21 when that series started, and they lost that game on my birthday as it was turning into midnight. We were at the bar watching that game. They lost that game in overtime, and I turned 21 at midnight, and I was able to have my first ever drinks in life at that time. So you're right. That was a good one. Marvelous. 10, 13, 15, heck, 09, 14, 11. What's your favorite theme, your favorite Stanley Cup, your favorite memory of the dynasty?
I'd say 1961.
Stop
seriously,
it.
seriously. Well, if you think about it, Rudy Pilas was quite a coach. The thing is that it had been such a long time, and the first one was very special because it had been since 1961 that it was the longest drought of any team. The expansion teams, of course, don't count because they came in '67, but it was the longest drought of the original 6. So it was quite, and of course the goal that had to go to overtime review, was it a goal or wasn't it by Kane? So I think that because it was the first one, that's the one that I have the best memories for. And then the other two were great, but it's like your first girlfriend or something. It was the first time in so many years, and it was wonderful.
No, that's a good point. All right, Devin. It looks like you're free. You're back on your home base now. So hopefully we're not worrying about any interference. What was your favorite of the three, or anything in between?
I mean, 2009 was a lot of fun. 2010 was real great. But of course, the Kyle Beach thing really tarnishes that. But I will go with the one that I have a banner of in my bedroom, which I'm not at. And that's 2015. And my favorite moment, I had to look up because I want to make sure I got it right. It was Game 6, where it didn't count, but Andrew Shaw had that goal that bounced off his head into the goalpost. And apparently that's when we found the rule you cannot score a goal in hockey off your head. But still, that was probably the coolest moment I remember going back to that entire Blackhawks dynasty these past, as Paul 10 years ago.
Hell yeah, dude. That's a metal-ass moment in sports, Chicago sports. Oh, Andrew Shaw, when you start looking at some of them dudes, Paul, remember when we said he got that dog in him? I forgot what we were talking about. The Blackhawks had some dudes that had that dog in them. We forget about Dustin Byfuglien, Joe.
We were talking about Jimmy Butler's libido.
Oh, yeah. You know what? Shout out to Jimmy Butler. Shout out. Lifetime recording to this. Things are getting a little crazy down in South Beach, and it's always South Beach, but things are crazy here on the West Side as it is officially over. The dynasty has come to a close. The last night of the castle has left, and now a new day is born for the Chicago Blackhawks. Kyle Beach thing will kind of be a shadow over everything. But there was a lot of winning. There was a lot of Hall of Famers. There's going to be a lot of banners and a lot of statues for some of these dudes, including Jonathan Toews. And I'll be lying and I'll be a hypocrite if I didn't say it was a big part of my life. And it was a huge, enjoyable moment for, I think, all of us here as sports fans living through what was a crazy moment where the Chicago Blackhawks were the ticket of the town. And it's going to be crazy to see what happens if they end up with the number 1 draft pick. But until then, we'll be here covering to see how this all shakes out. And we want to know your thoughts. We're on Twitter at Sports Cubicle TV. Jonathan Toews will not be brought back to the Chicago Blackhawks. Will he retire? Will he come back for some more hockey? Let us know your thoughts. For the marvelous one, Dan Marver, for Devin Tingle, for Paul Chivari, I'm Mike Mercado.